The sun was peeking through the kitchen window, creating patterns of light and shadow on the floor. I looked at my hands. They showed my age even more than my face. Wrinkled skin, protruding veins, age spots. 78 years old, though. I remembered how my mother could barely move around the house at that age, and I still cleaned, cooked, and even worked in the garden sometimes. My name is Adelaide Whitmore, and I have lived alone in a two-story house in the suburb of Johns Creek for over 30 years. 3 years ago, I was widowed. My husband, Percival Whitmore, was a successful financial analyst. He wasn't the kind of guy who was on the cover of magazines or interviewed on television, but he was a well-known name among professionals. He could predict market trends as accurately as if he had a time machine. I poured myself a cup of tea Earl Grey, his favorite, and sat by the window overlooking the garden. Percival always said it was the best view in the house. The jasmine bush he had planted for our 20th anniversary was now in full bloom. The white flowers looked like little stars against the dark green leaves. Bentley was supposed to arrive today with Marilyn, my son, our only child. He's 52 years old, and sometimes I think I can still see him as that little boy who used to come to me with shattered knees and demand a kiss so it wouldn't hurt. Now he comes once a month, two at the most, and that's if they need anything. I got up and started making dinner. Lasagna has been his favorite dish since childhood, though admittedly I wasn't sure if he remembered it. The last few years, it was like a wall had grown between us. When Percival died, it was like I became a burden. Strange, isn't it? I've always been financially independent, with my own house, pension, savings. I never asked them for help once. And yet, in their eyes, I had become a problem to be solved. The doorbell rang, interrupting my musings. They had arrived earlier than usual. I wiped my hands on my apron and went to open the door. "Mom!" Bentley hugged me like we hadn't seen each other in a year, even though it had only been 3 weeks. Something was wrong. I could feel it right away. Too much enthusiasm. "Hi, honey." I smiled and looked over his shoulder at Marilyn. She was standing behind me, dressed as impeccably as ever. Her brown hair was arranged in an elegant style. Her beige suit sat perfectly on her slender figure. 45 years old, and she looked 35. She smiled sweetly, but I'd long ago learned to see what was behind that smile. "Adelaide, how nice to see you." She came over and kissed me on the cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume and ambition. "Likewise, my dear. Come on in. I made lasagna." "Oh, Mom, you don't have to worry so much," Bentley said. But I could see his eyes light up. He always loved my lasagna. We made our way to the kitchen and I started setting the table. Marilyn tried to help, but I politely declined. I knew she wasn't comfortable in my kitchen. "How's your business, Marilyn?" I asked, laying out the utensils. "Oh, it's great." She perked up. "We've been booked to cater a buffet for Anderson Consulting's anniversary. It's a great opportunity. If all goes well, we may get a permanent contract." Marilyn owns a small catering company. She started out making hors d'oeuvres for her girlfriend's parties, and now she has 5 employees and an office in the downtown business district. I've always respected her business acumen. "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "You've always been driven." "Yes, but we need to expand." She glanced at Bentley. "We're thinking of opening a second office closer to the northern neighborhoods." "And you need investment?" I asked directly. "I'm too old for games." Bentley blushed slightly, a trait he got from me, not Percival. My husband never blushed. "Not really, Mother. We're just sharing plans." I nodded and set the lasagna dish on the table. The dinner conversation flowed casually. Bentley talked about his job as a tax consultant, clients, paperwork, new tax rules. Marilyn inserted comments about her catering projects. I listened and realized there was something they weren't telling me. Too many general phrases, too few specifics. After lunch, we moved to the living room. I offered tea and the apple pie I'd baked yesterday. Marilyn politely declined. Diet, of course. Bentley took a double portion. "Mother," he began as I sat down in my favorite chair by the fireplace. "Marilyn and I have been thinking, this house is so big for you alone. Here it is. I knew this conversation would happen sooner or later." "I like the space," I replied quietly. "There are a lot of memories here." "Of course," Marilyn quickly agreed. "But keeping such a big house in order is exhausting at your age. My age, as if I were 90 instead of 78. I can manage, I said. Mrs. Jenkins comes once a week to clean and I do the rest. But it's winter, the snow, Bentley continued. Do you remember when you slipped last year? I didn't slip. I just took a bad step, I corrected him. And it happens to people at any age. We're just worried about you. Marilyn leaned forward with a look of genuine concern on her face. There's a wonderful apartment at Sunny Acres. There's constant medical supervision. A community for you. Sunny Acres is one of the most expensive nursing homes around. I was there once when I visited Eleanor, a friend of Percival's. Perfectly mowed lawns, smiling staff, and the smell of loneliness behind the scent of lavender and cleaning products. I prefer to stay here, I said firmly. I'm still quite capable of looking after myself. No one's saying you're not, Mother. Bentley shifted to the tone he used when he thought I was being unreasonable. But you have to think of the future. Selling the house would give you a comfortable life at Sunny Acres for the rest of your days, and the rest would go to them. I didn't say it out loud, but we all knew it. I'll think about it, I replied, even though we all knew it was just a way of closing the subject. Bentley sighed but didn't insist. He knew me too well. Or thought he did. I'd changed since Percival died. Tougher, maybe. Or maybe I just stopped pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. By the way, Marilyn suddenly changed the subject. I recently read an article about collecting antiques. I remembered that your husband had a watch collection, didn't he? I tensed, but tried not to show it. Yes, Percival had some nice pieces. He was a real connoisseur, Bentley said. I remember how he could talk for hours about movements, the history of brands. Yes, it was his passion, I agreed. He was particularly fond of pocket watches. Do you still have it? Marilyn asked me casually. Of course. I looked her straight in the eye. I keep it in the safe. It was his collection, and I would never part with it. Of course, Mom, we understand, Bentley said quickly. I'm just curious. Why don't you show us? I haven't seen them in a long time. I hesitated. Something about their interest seemed insincere to me, but maybe I was getting too suspicious as I got older. Another time, I said. They're stored in a safe deposit box, I lied. In fact, most of the collection is indeed in the bank, but I keep a few particularly valuable pieces at home, in a box in my bedroom. Oh, of course. Marilyn was clearly disappointed, but quickly hid it. I completely understand. Safety first. The conversation turned to other topics. They talked about their recent vacation in Arizona, about the new car they were planning to buy. I listened and nodded in the right places, but my thoughts were far away. I was thinking about Percival, about how much he loved his watches, especially the Vacheron Constantine pocket watch he'd bought at an auction in Geneva for a sum he preferred not to tell even me about. When they were finally about to leave, I felt both relieved and sad at the same time. How strange that my own son had become almost a stranger. What had gone wrong? When did it happen? We'll stop by in a couple weeks, Bentley promised, hugging me goodbye. Think about Sunny Acres, okay? I will. I smiled, knowing I wouldn't. Marilyn kissed my cheek, her perfume remaining in the air even after she pulled away. It was so good to see you, Adelaide. Take care of yourselves. I closed the door behind them and leaned my back against it. The house suddenly seemed too quiet and empty, but it was my silence and my emptiness, and I wasn't going to part with them. That evening I called Doris, my neighbor and perhaps the only close person left in my life. She's 72, a widow like me, and we understand each other without words. Did they come? She asked after the exchange of greetings. Yes, and they started talking about the nursing home again. Doris snorted. Of course they did. Your house must be worth a fortune by now. The neighborhood's grown up in the last few years. It's not just the house, I said. Today they were asking about Percival's watch collection. Watches? Doris sounded surprised. Why would they want to know about that? I don't know, I sighed. Marilyn said something about expanding her business. Maybe they need the money. And they think they can just come and take what belonged to your husband? Doris was indignant. It's your property now. They haven't asked to sell the watch yet. I tried to be fair. They've just shown interest so far. Be careful, Adelaide, Doris warned. You're too kind to them. Perhaps she was right. I've always tried to see the best in people, even when they gave me reason to think otherwise. It was a quality Percival found both charming and naive. After the bell rang, I went upstairs and took the watch box out of the closet. I opened it and went through the contents. 5 pocket watches by different makers, all in perfect condition. Percival was very meticulous in the care of his collection, but he always kept the most valuable ones, the Vacheron Constantin, in a special case. I took them in my hands, feeling a pleasant heaviness, the engraved gold case, the flawless dial. Percival liked to say that a good watch had a soul. I opened the lid and looked at the movement, which had worked flawlessly so far. I wound it up and put it to my ear, listening to the ticking. The sound took me back to a time when Percival had been alive, and we'd spent evenings together in this very house. I closed the watch and returned it to its case. Something in Bentley and Marilyn's behavior made me uneasy. I decided that tomorrow I would put the watch somewhere more secure. My intuition told me that the interest in Percival's collection was not accidental, and I had better be on my guard. As I fell asleep in my big bed, I thought about how my life had changed over the past 3 years, about the loneliness that had become my constant companion, about the son who has turned into a polite stranger, about a house that holds so many memories that sometimes feels like a living thing. And somewhere deep inside, I felt that the peace I had so carefully built since Percival's death was about to be broken. A few days after Bentley and Marilyn's visit, I still couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. Their interest in Percival's watch seemed to me too insistent. I told Doris about it when we met for morning coffee on her veranda. It was a beautiful spring day, and the sun was already warming, though I could still feel the morning chill. They'd never asked about the clock before. I stirred the coffee, watching the sugar crystals dissolve. Not a word in the 3 years since Percival's death. And suddenly there was such interest. Doris pressed her lips together. She always did that when she was unhappy about something. And you say they mentioned Marilyn's business expansion? Yes, a second office somewhere up north. I sipped my coffee. But they didn't ask for money directly. Not yet. And this watch, is it valuable? I nodded. Especially the Vacheron Constantin. Percival bought it at an auction in Geneva. He never said how much he paid, but I suspect it was quite a lot. He always kept them separate from the rest of his collection. And how often do Bentley and Marilyn visit you? Once a month, usually. Sometimes less often. Doris snorted. Not too often for an only son. I sighed. This was a conversation we'd had more than once. They have their own lives, Doris. Bentley had always been independent. Independent? Doris raised an eyebrow. Didn't you tell me how he called every other day when he was married to his first wife, Laura? She was right. Before Marilyn, there was Laura, a sweet, quiet elementary school teacher. They divorced after 7 years of marriage. Incompatibility of character, Bentley explained. A year later, he met Marilyn. She was the complete opposite of Laura. Bright, ambitious, purposeful. And since then, Bentley has been coming to my house less and less often. Marilyn is very busy with her business. I tried to justify my sister-in-law, though I didn't really believe in what I was saying. And Bentley is too busy to visit his mother? Doris shook her head. You know, Adelaide, sometimes you can be too kind to people who don't deserve it. I didn't say anything. What could I say? That I couldn't bear the thought of my only son avoiding me? That I was afraid to admit that we were strangers to each other? Just be careful. Doris covered my hand with hers. And the clock? Maybe you should check to make sure it's okay. I looked at her in surprise. You don't think Bentley could have... I don't think anything, Doris shrugged. Just check it out. That evening, I went up to the bedroom and opened the closet. Hidden behind a stack of linens was a small mahogany box inlaid with mother of pearl. I pulled it out and set it on the bed. The box wasn't locked. I'd lost the key long ago, but it didn't matter. No one but me knew it existed. Or at least that's what I thought. Inside were 5 pocket watches from different manufacturers. I carefully took each one out, checking their condition. All were in place, except... I froze. The case that should have held the Vacheron Constantin was empty. My heart skipped a beat. I turned the box over, shaking out the contents onto the bed. Maybe I'd just put them somewhere else. But I remembered exactly how I'd returned them to the case after the last time I'd checked. I started frantically searching all over the room. I opened every drawer, looked under the bed, checked the pockets of every coat in the closet. The watch was nowhere to be found. The thought I'd been chasing away from me became crystal clear. The watch had been stolen, and I knew exactly who had done it. Bentley and Marilyn. Who else would know about the box? Who else had been in my house lately? Only them. I sat on the edge of the bed, feeling my hands shake. My own son had stolen my late husband's watch from me. The watch that had meant so much to Percival. The watch he'd kept with such care. My first impulse was to call Bentley and demand an explanation. But something stopped me. Intuition, perhaps. Or a desire to understand what was going on before jumping to conclusions. I gathered the rest of the watch back into the box and put it back where it belonged. Then I went down to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine. Not a habit, more of an exception. But right now, I needed to gather my thoughts. Why did they need that particular watch? Yes, it was the most valuable in the collection. But if they wanted money, why not ask for it directly? I'd help if I could. Bentley knew that. Or was it more than just the money? I remembered the last conversation I'd had with them. Marilyn had talked about expanding the business. Bentley had mentioned something about a new car. Maybe they really needed the funds and decided it was easier to steal the watch than to ask. But how did they know where I kept it? I never showed them the box. It was always hidden in the closet behind the laundry. And then it hit me. 2 weeks ago, Bentley and Marilyn arrived unannounced. I was in the garden when they showed up. Bentley said they were driving by and decided to stop by. I invited them into the house, and while I was making tea, Marilyn asked permission to use the bathroom. She had been away for quite a while, but I hadn't paid much attention to it. It was all becoming clear now. She must have been looking for the clock. She must have found it. Then, on her last visit, they'd asked about the collection to make sure I hadn't noticed it was missing. And I, stupid me, hadn't even checked the box after they left. I finished my wine and set my glass on the table. What do I do now? Call the police? No, I couldn't do that to my own son despite his betrayal. Confront them directly, but what if they deny everything? I had no proof other than my suspicions. There was something else that troubled me. Percival had always treated this watch with special care. He didn't just keep it separate from the rest of his collection. He never showed them to guests, never mentioned them in conversations with other collectors. Only to me, he once told me that this watch was more than just a movement. There's something special about them, he said, but never explained exactly what he meant. I decided to call Doris. They stole the watch, I said as soon as she answered the phone. What? She sounded worried. Are you sure? Positive. The Vacheron Constantine is gone. I was just checking the box. Oh, Adelaide. Doris sighed. I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? I don't know, I answered honestly. Calling the police seems too much. But it's a theft. I know it is, but it's my son Doris, and I'm not even sure I can prove it was him. The box wasn't locked, and I lost the key a long time ago. Doris was silent for a while. Maybe we should call Bentley. Just ask him directly? I considered the idea, but I didn't like it. If Bentley really did steal the watch, he'd probably deny it, and that would only complicate things. No, I finally said. I want to understand what they're up to first. Why would they want this particular watch? It's valuable, isn't it? Yes, but it's more than that. Percival treated it in a very special way. Never showed it to outsiders, never even mentioned it to other collectors. Maybe there's something hidden in them, Doris suggested. Jewelry or something? I'd never thought of that. Could Percival have hidden something in the watch? It seemed unlikely. But then again, he had always been a man full of surprises. I don't know, I said. But I'm going to find out what they're up to. And how are you going to do that? I thought about it. I needed to come up with a plan. Something that would let me figure out what was going on without drawing too much attention. For starters, I said, I'm going to try and find out where they might have sold the watch. There aren't many places in town where you can get a good price for an antique clock. Do you think they've already sold it? They might have. If they need money for Marilyn's business, they're not likely to keep the clock for long. So what are you going to do? Call every antique store in town? Not all of them, I answered. I'll start with Liam Brody. He's an old friend of Percival's and the best antique watch expert in town. If Bentley wants a good price, he'll probably go to him. And if Liam buys the watch, can you prove it's yours? That was a good question. I didn't have the paperwork for the watch. Percival always kept all the papers in his office, and I didn't know where. I don't know, I admitted. But first I'd have to find out if they were there. Then I'll think about it. Be careful, Adelaide, Doris warned me. This is all a very unpleasant situation. After Doris and I talked, I sat in silence for a long time, thinking about my next steps. It had been a week since Bentley and Marilyn had visited, and in that time they hadn't called or visited me. This was unusual, even for them. Usually, Bentley was at least formally interested in my affairs a couple times a month. Their silence only reinforced my suspicions. They were avoiding contact, afraid I'd discovered I was missing, or perhaps they were waiting for things to settle down before showing up at my house again. I decided to give them a little more time. Let them think I hadn't noticed. In the meantime, I would start my little investigation. The next day, I called several antique stores in town, posing as a collector looking for a Vacheron Constantin pocket watch. No one could offer me anything of the sort. I then called Liam Brody, but his secretary said he was away and wouldn't be back until 3 days later. It was a setback, but I wasn't going to give up. I decided to visit Liam as soon as he got back. In the meantime, all I could do was wait and think. I often wondered what might have been hidden in the watch, if anything at all. Percival never told me all the details of his work. He said the less I knew, the better for me. There were many secrets in the financial world, and not all of them were pleasant. Maybe the watch held some secret related to his career? Or was it something personal, something he wanted to hide even from me? The thought that Percival might have had secrets from me gave me a strange feeling. We'd been together for almost 50 years. I thought I knew him like the back of my hand, but perhaps I was wrong. At night, I dreamed of Percival. He was standing in his office, his back to me, hiding something in his desk drawer. When I asked what he was doing, he turned around with a smile and said, "Preparing a surprise, dear." But I saw something else in his eyes. Anxiety? Guilt? I woke up with a sense of unease that didn't leave me all day. On the third day after discovering he was missing, Bentley finally called. His voice sounded casual, as if nothing had happened. "Mom, how are you? I just wanted to see if everything was okay." "I'm fine, thank you," I answered, trying to keep my voice normal. "And how are you and Marilyn?" "Fine. Marilyn has a big booking for a corporate reception. She's very busy. And I'm, the usual routine." We talked for a few more minutes about nothing. Weather, health, neighborhood news, not a word about the clock, not a hint about their last visit. "By the way," Bentley said before saying goodbye, "Marilyn and I are thinking of stopping by your place this weekend. If you don't mind, of course." "I'd love to see you," I lied. After talking to Bentley, I felt even more determined. They were obviously up to something, and I was determined to find out what it was. I called Doris and told her about Bentley's call. "They're coming this weekend," I said, "and they're pretending like nothing happened." "Maybe they want to see if you've noticed it's missing," Doris suggested. "Maybe. Or maybe they have some other reason. What are you going to do? Pretend I don't know anything. Let them think their plan worked." And then? And then I'm going to watch and wait for Liam to come back from his vacation. The next 2 days passed in anxious anticipation. I tried to occupy myself with the usual chores, cleaning, reading, gardening, but my thoughts kept returning to the clock, to Bentley and Marilyn, to the secret that Percival might be keeping. The evening before Bentley and Marilyn's visit, I checked the clock box again. It was the same. The Vacheron Constantin was missing. The other watches were in place. I closed the box and returned it to the closet behind the stack of linens. Tomorrow I would play the part of the unsuspecting mother. And then I would find out the truth, whatever it took. Bentley and Marilyn never showed up that weekend. They called at the last minute to apologize, some urgent work for Bentley, some sudden order for Marilyn. I wasn't surprised and was even relieved. Pretending everything was fine would have been hard. Monday morning began as usual. I got up at 7:30, had a cup of coffee on the veranda and looked through the morning paper. Nothing unusual. nothing that foreshadowed events to come. The bell rang as I was finishing watering the flowers in the living room, the little violets that Percival loved so much. I put down the watering can and walked to the phone, thinking it must be Doris. Adelaide Whitmore speaking. Madame Whitmore, this is Liam Brody. His voice sounded tense, which was uncharacteristic of the always calm Liam. Liam, hello? It's good to hear from you. Are you back from your trip? Yeah, I got back last night. Mrs. Whitmore. Adelaide. He hesitated, as if searching for words. You must see what was hidden inside that watch. I felt my heart skip a beat. What kind of watch are you talking about, Liam? Percival's Vacheron Constantine. Your son and his wife brought it to me for appraisal a few days ago. They wanted to sell them. I sank slowly into my chair, so my suspicions were confirmed. Bentley and Marilyn had indeed stolen the watch and were trying to sell it. What did you tell them? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Told them I needed time to evaluate it properly, that I would contact them in a few days. But that's not the point, Adelaide. When I examined the mechanism, I discovered a secret compartment. A secret compartment? I was surprised. In all the years Percival had owned this watch, he'd never mentioned one. Yes, a very elaborate one. It's almost impossible to see unless you know where to look. And inside I found a photograph of a young woman and a small key. I felt the room around me begin to spin. A picture of a woman? The key? What did it all mean? Are you sure it was Percival's watch? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. Absolutely. I remember that watch very well. Percival had shown it to me several times, though he had never let me hold it in my hands. It's unique, engraved on the inside of the cover. The initials, PW, and the date, the year 1988. That was the year of our silver wedding. Percival bought the watch at an auction in Geneva, where we went to celebrate our anniversary. What are you going to do, Liam? I asked. Have you contacted Bentley yet? No, not yet. I thought I'd talk to you first. That watch, it belongs to you, doesn't it? Yes, I answered firmly. Bentley and Marilyn took it without my permission. Liam sighed. I could hear him going through something on his desk. That's what I thought. Bentley was too persistent. Said you gave him the watch after Percival died, but something about his behavior struck me as odd. I never gave him that watch, I said. He stole it from my house. Adelaide, can you come to the store? I think you should see what I found. And get the watch, of course. I agreed to come over in an hour. Hanging up the phone, I sat still for a while, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. The secret compartment, a photograph of an unknown woman, a key. What did it all mean? And why had Percival never told me about it? I gathered myself quickly and hailed a cab. On the way to Liam's store, my thoughts swirled in my head like bees in a hive. Who could the woman in the picture be? Why had Percival kept her image in the secret compartment of his favorite watch? And what did the little key open? Liam's store was in the old part of town, in a building dating back to the turn of the last century. Vintage signage, dark wood-framed windows, a door with a small bell that jingled as you entered. It all created a time-traveling atmosphere. Liam was waiting for me. He was behind the counter talking to a customer, but when he saw me, he immediately apologized and came over. Adelaide, thank you for coming on such short notice. Come into my office. He led me through the store to a small room in the back. It was a cozy room with a solid wooden desk, a few chairs, and shelves filled with books and catalogs. Sit down, please. Liam pointed to a chair opposite the table. Would you like some tea, coffee? No, thank you. I sat down, feeling the tension stiffen my shoulders. Show me what you found, Liam. He nodded and opened the desk drawer. He pulled out a familiar dark blue velvet case and placed it in front of me, then carefully pulled out a watch. The Vacheron Constantin looked exactly as I remembered it. The gold case, finely engraved, the flawless dial, the hands frozen at 1:45. Your son didn't wind them, Liam remarked. That's good. It's better for old movements like this to run regularly, but not as often as a modern watch. I nodded silently, reaching out for the watch. Liam handed it to me, and I felt a familiar weight in my palm. I opened the lid and looked at the dial, then turned the watch over and saw the engraving Liam had mentioned. PW, and the date the year of our silver wedding. Now look here, Liam took the watch back and carefully opened the back cover, exposing the movement. See this little panel? It looks like it's part of the case, but it's actually... He gently pressed something and the panel slid open, revealing a tiny compartment. I leaned closer, holding my breath. Here. Liam pulled a small envelope out of the compartment and placed it on the table. Here's what I found. I opened the envelope with trepidation. Inside was a photograph, a small, yellowed photograph. It showed a young woman with dark hair and a serious look in her eyes. She was looking directly into the camera, smiling slightly. I thought there was something vaguely familiar about her features, but I couldn't remember where I'd seen her before. Next to the photo was a tiny key, no bigger than my pinky finger. It was old, with an intricate head decorated with some kind of pattern. Who is this woman? Liam asked. I don't know, I answered honestly, staring at the picture. I'd never seen her before. There's something written on the back, Liam said. I turned the picture over. There was indeed an inscription, in small, neat handwriting that I recognized immediately as Percival's. Eleanor, 1964. Forgive me. 1964. 2 years before I met Percival. Who was this Eleanor? And why did Percival ask for forgiveness? And what could this key unlock? Liam asked, picking up the small metal object. I have no idea. I shook my head. Percival had never mentioned a key or a secret compartment in the clock, certainly not Eleanor. We were both silent for a while, pondering the situation. What are you going to do now, Adelaide? Liam finally asked. I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. First, I want to take the watch, the photograph, and the key. They belong to me. Second, I want to find out who Eleanor is and what the note means, and what that key opens. What about Bentley and Marilyn? They'll be expecting an answer from me, won't they? I've been thinking. What do I do with my son and daughter-in-law? Confront them directly, call the police, or try to sort things out on our own? Tell them you need a little more time for the appraisal. That the watch is very rare and you want to consult an expert from Europe. That will give me time to figure out what it all means. Liam nodded. Good, but they're not likely to wait long. Bentley was very insistent about a quick sale. I understand, but I need at least a few days. Of course, Adelaide, I'll do my best. He carefully packed the watch back into its case and put the photograph and key in a separate envelope. Here, take it, and be careful. I thanked Liam and, making sure everything was securely packed, put the case and envelope in my bag. One more thing, Adelaide, Liam said as I was about to leave. When Bentley brought the watch, he wasn't alone. Marilyn was with him, and she seemed very interested in what might be inside the watch. She asked a lot of questions about the movement, how the watch opened, if there were any secret compartments inside. I froze. Do you think they knew about the secret compartment? I'm not sure, but Marilyn was definitely looking for something. She even offered me extra money if I would thoroughly inspect the mechanism and report any unusual details. That was weird. If Bentley and Marilyn just wanted to sell the watch for money, why such interest in the movement? Why offer an extra fee to inspect it? Thanks for the warning, Liam, I said. I'll keep it in mind. Leaving the store, I hailed a cab and gave Doris's address. I needed someone to talk to think this through, and Doris was the only person I could trust. Doris, as always, welcomed me with open arms. She could see in my face that something was wrong. Adelaide, what's happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. Perhaps I have, I replied, walking into her sitting room and sinking into a chair. The ghost of Percival's past. I told her everything about Liam's call, about the clock, about the stash with the photograph and the key, about the note on the back. Doris listened without interrupting, only occasionally shaking her head or raising her eyebrows. And you have no idea who this Eleanor is? She asked when I was done. I didn't. In all the years of our marriage, Percival never mentioned any Eleanor. What about his life before you met? Did he ever talk about her? I wondered. Percival didn't like to talk about his past. I knew only the general facts: where he had been born, where he had studied, where he had worked. But the details, the people, the relationships, all of it was obscured. Not much, I admitted. He always said his real life began when he met me. Doris chuckled. Typical male move. My life began with you, darling. And what came before that, you don't want to ask? I took the picture out of the envelope and showed it to Doris. Here it was, Eleanor. Doris scrutinized the picture. A beautiful girl, and young. How old is she here? 22 years old? About that, I agreed. The picture was taken in 1964, 2 years before Percival and I met. How old was he then? 30? 28, I corrected him. He was 4 years older than me. Doris turned the picture over and read the inscription. Forgive me. I wonder what he was apologizing for. I've been thinking about that too, I sighed, and about why he kept that picture all these years, keeping it a secret from me. And what this key opens, Doris added, picking up a small metal object. It looks old. Yes, and very unusual. I've never seen a key like this in our house. Doris examined the key carefully. Do you know what it looks like? It looks like the key to an old safe or a secret box. My grandfather had one with a double bottom and a tricky lock. I wondered, could Percival have something like that? And if so, where did he keep it? We have to look for it, I said firmly. Something that could be opened with that key. Something that might explain who Eleanor was and why Percival kept her picture. What about Bentley and Marilyn? Doris asked. Are you going to confront them? Not now, I shook my head. First, I want to find out what it all means, and to see if they knew about the stash in the clock. According to Liam, Marilyn had a special interest in the mechanism. You think they were looking for something specific? Maybe. But what? And how could they know about the stash if I didn't even know about it? We discussed these questions for a while longer, but we couldn't find any answers. Finally, I decided it was time to go home and start searching. Be careful, Adelaide, Doris warned me as she walked me to the door. If Bentley and Marilyn are really looking for something, they might not be happy to hear that you were ahead of them. I nodded, realizing she was right. The situation was getting more and more confusing and possibly dangerous. When I got home, the first thing I did was to take the watch, the photograph, and the key into the bedroom and hide them in a new place, an old jewelry box I kept in the far corner of the closet. Then she began a systematic search of the house, beginning with Percival's study. The study had remained virtually untouched since his death. I couldn't bring myself to sort through his belongings, to throw away the papers, to clear the shelves of the books he had loved so much. Everything was still as it had been when he was alive. The massive oak desk, the leather chair, the racks of books, the paintings on the walls. I methodically explored every desk drawer, every shelf, every inch of space, looking for something that could be opened with a small key. But I found nothing. My gaze fell on the painting that hung above the desk, a seascape that Percival had bought on our trip to Italy. I'd always thought there was nothing behind it, just a wall. But what if? I took the painting down and scrutinized the wall behind it. At first glance, there was nothing unusual, but when I ran my hand over the surface, I felt a slight unevenness. When I looked more closely, I noticed a thin line forming a rectangle about 20 by 30 centimeters. My heart beat faster. I tapped on the wall. The sound was different, more muffled in this place. There was definitely something there. But how to open it? I scrutinized the outline of the rectangle and noticed a tiny hole in one corner. A hole that could have been a keyhole. With trepidation, I pulled out a small key and held it up to the hole. It fit perfectly. I turned the key, and a part of the wall that seemed solid moved forward slightly, revealing a small niche. In the niche was an old leather folder tied with ribbon. I carefully pulled it out and placed it on the table. I untied the ribbon and opened the folder. Inside were documents, old letters, photographs, some official papers. And at the top was an envelope marked "To Adelaide if anything happens." I recognized Percival's handwriting. He'd left it for me. But why did he hide it? Why hadn't he told me about the hiding place, about the key, about the folder? With trembling hands, I opened the envelope and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. I unfolded it and began to read. My dear Adelaide, if you are reading this letter, it means I am no longer by your side. And it means that you have found the key I hid in the watch. I sank into the chair, feeling the ground go from under my feet. Percival knew this day could come. He had prepared. He'd left me a message from the past. I continued reading, and with each line, The world I knew crumbled and built anew. There are things I never told you. Not because I didn't trust you, but because I wanted to protect you. You and someone else. Now it's time to find out the truth. I turned the page, preparing to learn the secret Percival had kept all these years. A secret that began with a photograph of a young woman named Eleanor and a note that said, "I'm sorry." When I got home from Liam's jewelry store, I went up to the bedroom and hid the watch in a new place, an old shoebox on the top shelf of the closet. I put the envelope with the photo and the key next to it. I needed time to think it over, to gather my thoughts. I went down to the kitchen, put the kettle on. The mechanical actions were soothing. Getting a cup, making tea, adding a spoonful of sugar. Familiar rituals I'd followed for decades. But my thoughts were far from kitchen worries. Who was Eleanor? Why did Percival keep her picture in the secret compartment of his watch? And what did the inscription, "Forgive me," mean? After finishing my tea, I went back to the bedroom and took out the envelope again. I spread the photograph on the bed and scrutinized it. A young woman with dark hair and serious eyes. Something about her features seemed vaguely familiar, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Turning the photograph over, I read the inscription again. Eleanor, 1964. Forgive me. Percival's handwriting was firm, confident, without a trace of trepidation or doubt. But there was a heaviness in those simple words. I took the key and examined it carefully. Small, old-fashioned, with an intricate head. What could it open? Some kind of safe? A casket? A vault? And then it hit me. The writing on the back of the photo. What if it's not just a message from the past? What if it was a clue? I dressed quickly and went down to Percival's office. The room had been virtually untouched since his death. I couldn't bring myself to go through his things, rearrange the furniture, take the paintings off the walls. Everything was the same as it had been when he was alive: a massive oak desk, a leather armchair, shelves of books, paintings on the walls. The paintings. I slowly looked around the walls. There were 5 of them, a seascape above the table that we'd bought in Italy, an Art Nouveau abstract, a gift from a colleague, a Monet reproduction, a photograph of New York, where we'd spent our honeymoon, and a small portrait of a woman painted by a local artist. My gaze lingered on the last painting. The woman in the portrait was elderly, with gray hair and a wrinkled face. But there was something about her features, something in the line of her chin, in the shape of her eyes. I stepped closer, gazing into the portrait. Yes, I could see the resemblance now. The woman in the portrait could be an aged version of Eleanor from the photograph. My heart beat faster. I carefully removed the painting from the wall. There was nothing unusual on the back of the frame, just a paper backing securing the canvas. I put the portrait back in place and continued my inspection. Next was a picture of New York City. Taking it down, I noticed it was a little heavier than a normal photo frame should be. Turning it over, I found that the backing looked recently replaced. The edges of the paper were cleaner and newer than the other pictures. Carefully peeling away the backing, I looked inside the frame. It was empty, just the picture and the glass. I checked the rest of the paintings but found nothing out of the ordinary. The last was the seascape above Percival's desk, his favorite painting. He often said it reminded him of freedom, of the horizons that always awaited ahead. Removing the painting, I carefully examined the frame, the backing, the canvas itself. Nothing. I was about to hang it back up when my gaze fell on the wall behind the painting. At first glance, it was an ordinary wall, painted the same light beige color as the whole office. But when I looked more closely, I noticed a thin line, barely visible in the semi-darkness of the room. The line formed a rectangle about 30 by 40 centimeters. My heart beat even faster. I ran my fingers along the line, feeling the slight bulge. There was a tiny hole in one corner of the rectangle so small that it was easily mistaken for an ordinary wall irregularity. With trembling hands, I pulled out the key and held it up to the hole. It went in perfectly, without the slightest resistance. I turned the key, and the part of the wall that had seemed solid came forward slightly. A hiding place. Percival had hidden it in the wall of his study, and I, having lived with him for almost 50 years, hadn't even realized it. I tugged gently at a protruding part of the wall, and it opened easily, revealing a small niche. Inside was a dark leather folder tied with a simple ribbon. I took it out and carried it to the table. Sitting down in Percival's chair, I slowly untied the ribbon and opened the folder. Inside were several documents, neatly organized into separate envelopes. The first envelope was signed Will in Percival's firm, confident handwriting. I opened it and pulled out several sheets, stapled together. The first page read, Last Will and Testament of Percival James Whitmore. The date was 6 months before his death. But this was odd. Percival's formal will, read by his lawyer after his funeral, had been dated 2 years earlier. According to it, Percival's entire estate was divided between me and Bentley, with small amounts for a few charitable organizations. I began to read. I, Percival James Whitmore, being of sound mind and sound judgment, do hereby revoke all previous wills and dispositions, and declare this to be my last will and testament. A standard beginning, nothing unusual. But beyond that, the text deviated from what I'd heard in the lawyer's office. My estate is to be divided as follows. First, to my wife, Adelaide Ellen Whitmore, I leave our house in Johns Creek with all its contents, all bank accounts registered in my name, and 50% of the stock of Whitmore Analytics. Second, to my daughter, Fiona Margaret Chester, I leave 30% of the stock of Whitmore Analytics and the contents of safe deposit box number 112 at the First National Bank of Johns Creek. Third, to my son, Bentley Percival Whitmore, I leave 20% of the stock of Whitmore Analytics and a collection of watches, with the exception of a Vacheron Constantine pocket watch, which is to remain with my wife, Adelaide. I reread that paragraph several times, unable to believe my eyes. A daughter? Percival had a daughter? Fiona Margaret Chester? And Bentley was only receiving 20% of the company's stock, not 50% as stated in the official will. No wonder he and Marilyn were so anxious to get their hands on the watch. Perhaps they had somehow learned of the existence of this real will and wanted to destroy the evidence. I continued reading. What followed was the standard legal wording and the signatures of witnesses Liam Brody and another man whose name I didn't recognize. Setting the will aside, I picked up the next envelope. It said simply, To Adelaide. Inside was a letter written in Percival's hand. My dear Adelaide, if you are reading this letter, it means I am no longer by your side, and you have found the key I hid in the clock. I know I should have told you the whole truth in my lifetime, but I lacked the courage. For that, I apologize. The woman in the photograph is Eleanor Chester. We met when I was just starting my career in finance. She was 21, I was 27. It wasn't love, more like a brief romance that lasted only a few months. When Eleanor announced that she was pregnant, I was scared. My career was just beginning. I wasn't ready for family life. I offered her money for an abortion. Eleanor refused and said she could handle it on her own. She left town, and I didn't see her for over a year. Then I got a letter with a picture of a little girl, my daughter Fiona. I started sending Eleanor money, anonymously, through a lawyer. She never asked for more, never threatened to tell me about the baby. She was a strong woman, and she managed on her own. When I met you, Adelaide, Fiona was already 2 years old. I fell in love with you at first sight and knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with you. But I was afraid that if I told you about Fiona, you'd turn your back on me. It was a cowardly act, and I realize now that I should have been honest from the beginning. I continued to support Fiona financially all these years, through a trust fund that was managed by my lawyer. Eleanor died when Fiona was 18, cancer, quickly and ruthlessly. I met Fiona a few times after that, secretly on supposedly business trips. She grew up to be an amazing woman, smart, kind, strong, like her mother. She is married and has 2 children, my grandchildren, whom I have only seen in pictures. Fiona knows about me, knows I'm her father, but she never demanded recognition, never intruded into our lives. She understood that I had another family, you and Bentley. The official will, which is kept by my lawyer, was made 2 years ago, when I was still hesitant to tell the truth. But a few months ago, I made a new will, the one you found here. I had planned to talk to you, to tell you everything, but my health began to fail me and I kept putting off the hard conversation. Forgive me, Adelaide. Forgive the lies, the secrets, all these years of silence. Know that I loved you with all my heart, every day of our life together. In a separate envelope, you'll find all of Fiona's details, her address, phone number, photographs. I leave it up to you to decide whether or not to contact her. She knows you exist and will respect any choice you make. With everlasting love, Percival. I set the letter aside, feeling tears flow down my cheeks. So many years. So many years of secrets and lies. Percival had a daughter, a grown woman with a family of her own. I had a stepdaughter I didn't even know existed. I picked up the third envelope. In it were pictures Fiona at different ages, from a little girl to a grown woman. In the last picture, she was standing next to a man and two children, a boy about 10 years old and a girl about 7. The resemblance was obvious. Same dark hair, same chin line, same eyes. Fiona was a copy of her mother Eleanor, but I could see Percival's features in her smile, in the tilt of her head. The envelope also contained a sheet with an address in Portland, Oregon, and a phone number. Fiona lived on the other side of the country, but not that far away, only a few hours' flight away. I went back to the will and reread it again. A lot of things were becoming clear now. Bentley and Marilyn had somehow learned of Fiona's existence and the real will. Perhaps they had found some documents in Percival's papers after his death, and they wanted to destroy the evidence to save Bentley a larger share of the inheritance. But how did they know about the key in the watch? Perhaps Percival had mentioned it in some document they found. Or maybe they just guessed there might be something important in his favorite watch. I gathered all the documents back into the folder and tied it with ribbon. Then I returned the folder to the stash, closed it, and hung the painting back up. I needed time to think things through before making any decisions. I went down to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of wine, the second one of the day, which was unusual for me. But today's discoveries called for something stronger than tea. So Percival had a daughter from the affair before we met. He'd supported her financially over the years, and even dated her in secret when she was grown. And he'd left her 30% of the stock in his company, considerably more than Bentley. I couldn't blame Percival for the very fact of Fiona's existence. It had happened before we met. But hiding something like that for 50 years? Lying every day? Pretending he had only one child, only one family? And Bentley. Bentley obviously found out the truth and decided to hide it from me so he wouldn't lose part of his inheritance. My own son chose to deceive me for money. I remembered the words of Percival's letter. I leave it to you to decide whether or not to contact her. Fiona is a grown woman with a life of her own. Does she need contact with me, the widow of a father who never officially recognized her? And do I need it? I didn't know the answers to these questions. But I did know one thing. I couldn't let Bentley and Marilyn be tricked into getting something that didn't belong to them. Percival's real will had to be honored, no matter how painful it was for all of us. Finishing my wine, I decided to call Doris. I needed a friend's advice before I took the next step. Doris, it's Adelaide. You won't believe what I've discovered. I told her everything, about the stash, about the real will, about Fiona, about Percival's letter. Doris listened without interrupting, only occasionally sighing or exclaiming in surprise. "What are you going to do now?" she asked me when I had finished. "I have to contact a lawyer, show him the real will. I think I have to find Fiona. Tell her that I know the truth and that I don't hold a grudge against her." "And what about Bentley and Marilyn?" I sighed. That was the hardest question of all. "I don't know. Part of me wants to confront them directly, accuse them of stealing and lying. But the other part? The other part is just tired of it all. Of the lies, of the secrets, of the betrayal." "Give yourself time," Doris said softly. "You've learned too much in one day. Take a break, think it over, and then make your decisions." She was right. I was emotionally exhausted. The revelations of that day had turned my whole life upside down. Everything I knew and believed in. "Thank you, Doris," I said. "I'll call you tomorrow." After the conversation, I went up to the bedroom, took the watch out of its hiding place, and stared at it for a long time. That watch had kept Percival's secret all these years. It was the link between past and present, between mystery and truth. I opened the back and pressed the bezel like Liam had shown me. The stash was empty. I had the picture and the key now, but the watch itself was still the same accurate, reliable, keeping time that couldn't be taken back. As I fell asleep, I thought of Percival, of Fiona, of Bentley, of a life full of secrets and understatements. and the truth, which, as always, was more complicated than I'd realized. I woke up the next morning with a clear head and a firm decision. No more secrets, no more innuendo, no more manipulation. It was time to act. The first thing I did was call Gordon Prescott, the lawyer who had handled Percival's cases for the past 20 years. He was surprised to hear from me. We hadn't spoken since the reading of the formal will 3 years ago. "Mrs. Whitmore, what can I do for you?" His voice sounded wary. Perhaps he sensed something was wrong. "Minus Mr. Prescott, I need to see you today. It's regarding my husband's will." "The will has already been executed, Mrs. Whitmore. All assets have been distributed according to Mr. Whitmore's will." "Not all of them, Mr. Prescott. I found a second will dated later than the one you read." There was a long pause. "I'll be in the office until 6 o'clock, he said at last. "You can come back any time you like. I made an appointment for 2 o'clock in the afternoon." Then called Bentley. He picked up after the fifth ring, his voice sounding sleepy. "Mom, is something wrong?" "We need to talk, Bentley. You and Marilyn need to come over tonight, 7 o'clock. "Tonight? But we have plans." "Cancel them." I rarely spoke to my son in that tone of voice, and he must have sensed it was serious. "Okay, Mom. We'll be there. Is something wrong?" "We'll talk tonight," I said and hung up. Then I called Doris. I needed her moral support. "I'm going to see a lawyer at 2 o'clock today," I said. "I'm meeting Bentley and Marilyn tonight." "Are you sure you're ready for that?" I could hear the concern in Doris's voice. "I'm more than ready. No more lies and manipulation. It's time for all of us to face the truth." I hung up the phone and went into Percival's office. I opened the stash, took out the will and the letter. These documents were supposed to set things straight once and for all. At 2 o'clock, I was in Gordon Prescott's office. He was scrutinizing the will I had given him. "It's definitely Mr. Whitmore's handwriting," he said at last. "And the seal is genuine. Witnesses? Liam Brody." "I know. And the other witness, Thomas Henderson, is a notary who often worked with your husband. So the will is valid." "Legally, yes, it's legally valid, and it was signed later than the one that was executed, but its execution can be, problematic." "Why?" "The assets have already been distributed under the first will. Bentley got 50% of the company, not 20 as stated here, and this Fiona Chester. She never claimed her inheritance. Because she didn't know about it." I handed him Percival's letter. "Read it." Prescott read the letter, and his eyebrows rose in surprise. "It is unexpected," he said. Minus Mr. Whitmore had never mentioned another child. Apparently, he had kept it a secret. But now the truth must come out. I want the present will to be enforced. Prescott sighed. "That will be difficult, Mrs. Whitmore. Bentley is likely to contest it, and the process could take months, if not years." "I'm ready for it," I said firmly. "This isn't about money, Mr. Prescott. It's about truth and respecting my husband's last will and testament." He nodded, understanding. "Well then, we need to prepare the papers and contact Ms. Chester." "I'll do that myself," I said. "I have her contact information." We discussed the way forward, and Prescott promised to prepare all the necessary documents in the next few days. I left his office with the feeling that I had taken the first step toward restoring justice. In the evening, at 7 sharp, Bentley and Marilyn arrived. I met them in the living room, where I had already prepared tea and cookies, not because I wanted to spoil them, but because some conversations are easier to have over a cup of tea. Bentley looked worried. Marilyn looked wary. They sat down on the sofa opposite me, and I noticed them exchange quick glances. "Mom, what's going on?" Bentley asked. "You sounded not your usual self." I looked at my son, my only child, flesh of my flesh. How had we gotten to the point where we were almost strangers to each other? "I talked to Liam Brody yesterday," I began, watching their reactions. Marilyn paled slightly. Bentley tensed. "Yes?" His voice sounded casual, but I could see his fingers clenched on the armrest of the couch. "He told me you brought him Percival's watch. A Vacheron Constantine. The same one that was missing from my jewelry box." "What?" Bentley tried to act surprised. "What watch? What are you talking about?" "Don't make this difficult, Bentley." I shook my head. "I know you took the watch. I know you tried to sell it. And I know what Liam found inside it." Now they both looked alarmed. Marilyn threw her husband a look of panic. Mom, I don't know what you mean, Bentley began, but I interrupted him. No more lies. My voice was firm. I found the stash in my father's study, and the real will. Bentley straightened up sharply. What real will? My father's will was read 3 years ago. It was an old will. Percival had made a new one 6 months before he died. And in it, he left 30% of the company to his daughter, Fiona Chester. And you only 20. There was a heavy silence in the room. Bentley and Marilyn looked at me with shock. It's impossible, Bentley finally said. The father didn't have another daughter. There must be some mistake. There was no mistake. I pulled a picture of Fiona with her husband and children out of my pocket. There she is, your half-sister and her family. Bentley took the picture with shaking hands. Marilyn peered over his shoulder and her eyes widened. She looks like Percival, she whispered. Bentley threw the photograph on the table. That doesn't prove anything. It could be anyone. And this so-called new will is probably a forgery. It's signed by 2 witnesses and notarized, I said calmly. Gordon Prescott authenticated it this afternoon. Have you been to Prescott's yet? Bentley jumped up from the couch. Without me? It's my inheritance at stake. And Fiona's, I reminded him, who, unlike you, never demanded anything from her father. Because she's not his daughter, Bentley was almost shouting. This is some kind of scam, and you fell for it, Mom. Marilyn put her hand on her husband's shoulder, calming him down. Adelaide, she said in her most judicious tone, let's discuss this calmly. This is a very strange situation, and we must work it out together. There is nothing to discuss, I replied. I have found Percival's real will, and it will be executed. You knew about it, didn't you? That's why you stole the watch, to find the key to the cash. They exchanged quick glances, and I realized that I had hit the mark. We didn't steal any watch, Bentley said stubbornly, and we don't know about any stash. Then where did you get the Vacheron Constantine? I asked. The one Liam had shown me yesterday? Bentley looked cornered. I found them in my father's study after he died. They belong to him, which means, legally, they're mine now. No, Bentley. The will clearly stated that I was to keep the watch. And you knew that, which is why you didn't mention that you found it. You stole it from my jewelry box. I did not steal it. Bentley raised his voice. I just took what was rightfully mine. Like 50% of the company's stock? I shook my head. That's not your rightfully yours, Bentley. That's what you got by fraud, by hiding your father's real will. That's bullshit. He clenched his fists. I didn't hide anything. That will didn't exist until you found it. You're lying. I looked him straight in the eye. You knew about Fiona. You knew about the real will. And you decided to hide it from me so you could get more money. Marilyn stepped in, seeing that things were heating up. Adelaide, these are serious allegations. Do you have proof that Bentley knew about the other will? Your actions are my evidence, I replied. You stole the watch, tried to sell it, and were particularly interested in the movement. Liam said you offered him extra money for a thorough examination. You were looking for the key to the stash. Bentley and Marilyn looked at each other again, and this time I saw in their eyes not just alarm, but real fear. It's all a misunderstanding, Bentley muttered. We just wanted to appraise the watch. Enough lies. I was tired of this conversation. I've already contacted a lawyer. This will be enforced. Fiona will get her share of the company, just like your father wanted. I'll contest it in court. Bentley jumped up from the couch. It's a forgery, and I'll prove it. Do what you want, I shrugged. But know that all the evidence is against you. The watch you tried to sell, the key, the hiding place, Percival's letter explaining everything. The letter? Marilyn pitched forward. What letter? Percival left me a letter in the stash. It explained everything who Fiona was, why he'd hidden her existence, why he'd made a new will. Bentley turned even paler. I want to see that letter. The lawyer has it, I lied. In fact, the letter was in my bedroom, safely tucked away, along with the rest of my papers. Marilyn put her hand on her husband's shoulder. Bentley, we need to think. Talk to our lawyer. There's nothing to think about. He threw off her hand. This is some kind of conspiracy. This Fiona, whoever she is, won't get a dime of my father's inheritance. She is his daughter, I said calmly. Your sister, whether you like it or not. She's nobody, Bentley was almost shouting. And if you take her side against me, mother, then what? I looked at him defiantly. What will you do, Bentley? Stop coming once a month for the obligatory visit? Stop calling on holidays? Or maybe stop insinuating that I should go into a nursing home? He froze, shocked by my words. I never... Don't lie. I shook my head. I know everything about your plans, about your hints, about your desire to sell this house. But you know what? I really am going to sell it. Now both Bentley and Marilyn were looking at me in surprise. Sell the house? Marilyn blinked. But where will you go? I found a lovely apartment downtown, small but cozy. No stairs, with an elevator and concierge. Perfect for a single older woman, I smiled, enjoying their shock. But why? Bentley seemed confused. This house, there are so many memories here. Yes, Bentley, and a lot of them don't bring me joy anymore, especially the ones from the last few years. I looked him straight in the eye. I'm tired of the lies, the manipulation, the pretense. It's time to start a new chapter in my life. And what are you going to do? He asked, still not believing what was happening. Live, I answered simply. Travel. To see the world I'd always dreamed of, but never had the chance to explore because of my responsibilities as a wife and mother. With what money? Marilyn blurted out, and Bentley gave her a warning glance. My money, Marilyn. I smiled at her. Percival left me enough, and half the value of this house will go to me, too. Half? Bentley frowned. And the other half? It will be divided according to the will, I shrugged. Between you and Fiona. I won't allow it. Bentley jumped up. This house is part of my inheritance. I grew up here. I left the first chance I got, I reminded him. And I only visited when you needed something. It's not fair. Life isn't fair, Bentley, I sighed. I thought you'd have realized that by now. Marilyn put her hand on her husband's shoulder, reassuring him. Bentley, let's think about this soberly. Maybe there's a way to settle this peacefully without a trial or scandal. What other way? He looked at her angrily. To give half of what belongs to me to some stranger? Not half, Bentley, I corrected him. According to the will, Fiona gets 30% of the company and the contents of the safe deposit box. You get 20% of the shares and a collection of watches other than Vacheron Constantin. It's a robbery, he exclaimed. Why should she get more than me? I am his son. And she's his daughter, I replied calmly. The one he never officially recognized, the one he hid from the world. Maybe it's his way of making amends. Bentley shook his head, unable to believe what he was hearing. This is insane. You can't seriously think I'm going to accept this. You can accept it or you can fight it in court. I shrugged. But know that all the documents are authentic and I have witnesses to back that up. What witnesses? Marilyn was wary. Liam Brody, for one. He was one of the people who signed the will. They looked at each other again, and I realized I'd backed them into a corner. We need time, Bentley finally said. We need to think this through. Of course, I nodded. Think about it all you want, but know that the process is already underway. The lawyers will contact Fiona, and the real will be executed. And you? Bentley looked at me with sudden concern. Are you going to meet her, I wondered? Did I want to meet Fiona? The woman who was my husband's daughter, but whose existence I hadn't known for 50 years? No, I said at last. I'll let the lawyers handle that. I have no desire to meet her. It's not her fault that Percival lied to both of us, but I'm too old for new family dramas. So you're just gonna, let it go? Bentley seemed confused. Let her take a piece of our inheritance and you don't even want to see her face? It's not our inheritance, Bentley. It's Percival's inheritance, and he had the right to dispose of it as he saw fit. I looked at my son with sudden weariness. And yes, I'm letting it all go. For too long I've lived in the shadow of lies and secrets. It's time to move on. We argued for a while longer, but it was clear that Bentley and Marilyn were cornered. They knew that I had found the real will and that I had ample proof of its authenticity. Their plan had backfired, and now all they had to do was try to salvage what they could. When they finally left, I felt strangely relieved. It was as if a heavy weight had fallen from my shoulders. Yes, there were still a lot of hurdles ahead: legal procedures, selling the house, moving. But for the first time in a long time, I felt in control of my life. I called Doris and told her about the meeting. "They didn't admit to stealing the watch?" she asked. "Not directly. Bentley said he'd found it in his father's study. But their reaction to the mention of the real will was very revealing. They definitely knew about it." "So what now?" "Now I go forward," I said firmly. "Tomorrow I'll contact a real estate agent about selling the house. And I'll start planning my trip." Where will you go first? I wondered. So many places I'd dreamed of, so many corners of the world I wanted to see. "Italy," I finally said. "Tuscany." Percival and I had always wanted to spend more time there, but had never found the opportunity. "That sounds wonderful." Doris sounded genuinely happy for me. "You deserve it, Adelaide. After everything that's happened." "Thank you," I smiled, though she couldn't see it, "for being there for me all this time." After talking to Doris, I went up to the bedroom and pulled out my watch. I opened the back cover and pressed the panel, revealing the stash. It was empty. The photograph and the key were now stored elsewhere. But the watch itself was still the same: accurate, reliable, keeping time that could never be reclaimed. I closed the lid and put the watch on the bedside table. It had witnessed so many years of my life, so many joys and sorrows, and now they would witness my new beginning. In the morning, I woke up with a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in a long time. There was a new life ahead of me, without lies, without manipulation, without toxic relationships. A life where I would make decisions only for myself, without trying to please others or conform to other people's expectations. I knew Bentley wouldn't accept it easily. He would fight, maybe even sue. But that didn't bother me now. I had the truth on my side, and that gave me strength. As for Fiona, maybe someday I'd like to meet her. To recognize the woman who was Percival's daughter, to see his reflection in her features. But not now. Right now, I needed time to myself, time to heal old wounds and start a new chapter. I opened the curtains and looked out at the garden, flooded by the morning sun. The jasmine bush that Percival had planted for our 20th anniversary was in full bloom, white flowers like little stars against the dark green leaves. I will miss this garden, this house, the memories they hold, but I will not look back. There is a new day ahead, new horizons, new possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready to face them with an open heart.